The purpose of this screencast is to model for you the process that I went through in creating body paragraph number 1 of an analytical essay about a novel. I'm going to be using a novel that none of you read. Milkweed was one of the 4 choices for our novel study unit, but nobody picked it. So I'm going to use that as my model so that it's not unfair, so it doesn't look like I'm doing the work for one novel group but not for the other, and so that you're not tempted to copy because it's a different book altogether. As a result, I might have to do a little background information to explain things for you as I go. What you're looking at here is my completed outline for just body paragraph number 1, and I am going to walk you through it and explain what I put in each place, and then at the end, after I walk you through my outline, I'm going to show you my finished paragraph all put together, because it's not exactly a copy and paste. You have to kind of massage the words into the paragraph. You're going to have to add transitions, for example, to weave it all together so that it flows smoothly from one idea to the next. So I'll show you how I did that. But starting here, we start with the topic sentence, and it's body paragraph 1. So my topic sentence just goes right into my first technique, and I say, in Milkweed, I want to stop here and draw your attention to the fact that your title, anytime you mention the title of your book, it has to be in italics. So please make sure you're doing that. I will expect that you have punctuated the title of your novel correctly in italics at all times, and capitalized, of course. In Milkweed, Spinelli, who is the author, who I will have already identified up in the introduction of my essay. Once you've introduced the author by their full name, in this case Jerry Spinelli, in your introduction, for the rest of the essay, you refer to them by their last name only. Okay? So, one more time. In Milkweed, Spinelli utilizes dramatic irony to heighten the empathy his readers experience toward Misha and the other characters. Just from that topic sentence, you should know which technique to create empathy I'm going to talk about. And I hope by now you've already watched my screencast on transitions, in which I showed you the different kinds of topic sentences, some that are very direct and basic and some that are a bit more sophisticated. I'm modeling for you a slightly more sophisticated topic sentence. You're going to be writing whatever you're comfortable with, but I hope you challenge yourself to stretch your writing a little bit more like this. So we've got dramatic irony, okay, and we've explained that it heightens empathy. Now I go into specific examples from the novel that prove that dramatic irony makes you feel empathy. I want you to notice the way I organized it. I have a specific example, and then right away after that example, I write a sentence or two that explains how that example proves that dramatic irony creates empathy. Then I go into my next example from the text and I explain how that proves that dramatic irony creates empathy. I do use 3 examples from the text because I want to show you how you could possibly fit 3 in one paragraph, which is something a lot of you struggle with. Okay, so my first specific example, Yuri tells Misha to run away from the ghetto because the trains were coming. Misha returns to the Milgrams, which is the Jewish family that he has been staying with in the ghetto, and shares Yuri's warning. Mr. Milgram replies, "There will be no trains. Uncle Shepsel is right. There is nothing else they can do to us." Now you'll notice how I wove the quote, the direct quote, into my own writing. It was pretty smoothly woven in. I'm going to do another screencast on how to do that. But I do expect you to have direct quotes, and I do expect you to be able to cite the page number they came from. Okay? That's not news. You've done this before, right? So we have this instance where Yuri says, "Get out of here, there's trains coming," and he goes home and he tells the Milgrams, and Mr. Milgram says, "No, there's nothing worse than the ghetto. They can't do anything else to us." Now here's where I explain how this is dramatic irony and it makes us feel empathy. This makes the reader feel empathetic towards Mr. Milgram and the rest of the family because we are aware that far worse treatment awaits them than what they experience in the ghettos, but they do not see it coming. Moments of dramatic irony such as this create anxiety and tension in the reader. Do you see how direct you have to be, how clear you have to be? Don't assume your reader is going to figure it out. You have to explain how that example creates dramatic irony and how that makes you feel something. My next specific example is when the bombs begin to fall in Warsaw and everybody starts to run. Misha sees the people running and assumes a race is taking place, and he begins to dash ahead of them like it's fun. I'll explain that by saying that the reader feels worried for Misha because he is ignorant to the danger that surrounds him. The last specific example from the novel is that when we first see the jackboots, Misha believes that their marches are parades, and he declares that he wants to join the group. Now, this is dramatic irony because as soon as the jackboots are described, the reader is on edge because we know from the description that they're actually Nazis, but Misha doesn't know that. Now I'm going to share my closing sentence with you, and actually I've written 2 closing sentences for this paragraph because essentially these closing sentences are explaining this piece of evidence and the whole paragraph. You see the reminder here. You need to explain how this technique affects you and creates empathy in you as a reader. So my closing sentences say this: through these moments of dramatic irony, Spinelli creates a mood of anxiety and anticipation in the reader. In this way, he allows us to feel a fraction of what it must have been like to live through this uncertain and horrific time. Now, how did I put it all together? There's a little bit more work that needs to be done. I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to point some of these things out to you. Here's my finished paragraph. It's mostly everything you just saw, but we'll point out some of the things I added to make it flow more smoothly. Topic sentence is exactly the same. In Milkweed, Spinelli utilizes dramatic irony to heighten the empathy his readers experience toward Misha and the other characters. Now here's something new. One such use of dramatic irony occurs when. That's a transition phrase that guides the reader like a tour guide, like you're holding their hand through your ideas. It sets it up. It says, I'm about to give you one example of dramatic irony. Okay, so this is a transition, and I'm just going to put it in a different color so that it stands out to you. One such use of dramatic irony occurs when Yuri tells Misha to run away from the ghetto because the trains were coming. Misha returns to the Milgrams and shares Yuri's warning. Mr. Milgram replies, there will be no trains. Uncle Shepsel is right. There is nothing else they can do to us. That's just the same from my outline. Now here's something new again. This makes the reader feel empathetic towards Mr. Milgram and the rest of the family because. That's also transition language. It makes it very clear that you're about to explain. This is where you're putting your interpretation in the essay. It's not just gathering quotes or paraphrasing what happened in the book, but this is the part where you're going to show your reader of your essay your thinking, your critical thinking, your analysis of what this all means and why it matters. This makes the reader feel empathetic because we are aware that far worse treatment awaits them than what they experience in the ghetto, but they do not see it coming. Moments of dramatic irony such as this create anxiety and tension in the reader. And that's directly from my outline, okay? Again, here's something new. Dramatic irony is also used with similar effects when, that's more transition language, and it lets your reader know, hey, I'm about to give you a second example, and it's used for a similar purpose. The bombs begin falling in Warsaw, and everyone starts to run. Misha sees the people running and assumes a race is taking place. He begins to dash ahead of them in glee. I hope you notice that this is new language. In my original outline, I said he dashes ahead of them like it's fun. But as I was writing my paragraph, I thought I can do a little bit better than that. That's kind of basic language. This is nothing impressive, but it's intentional. It's done to make it a little bit tighter, a little bit more polished, okay? The reader feels worried for Misha because, again, this is transition language that shows a relationship between the ideas I just expressed, the example from the book, and how it connects to my bigger topic in this entire paragraph. It's helping the reader think about my examples the way I want my reader to think about them. If I just leave it up to the reader, they might not interpret it the way I want them to interpret it. I have to tell them how to interpret it. The reader feels worried for Misha because he is ignorant to the danger that surrounds him. Finally, now you should all know that that's a transition word. Finally, Misha's ignorance is highlighted yet again when he first saw the jackboots. Okay, more transition language. Do you notice that I'm not repetitively saying another use of dramatic irony, a final use of dramatic irony. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just trying to show you an example that's more sophisticated to push you, because some of you are ready to be pushed. You are ready to try more sophisticated language, and I want to show you how it's done. If you're not there yet, then it's okay to go with a more basic language. Finally, Misha's ignorance is highlighted yet again when he first saw the jackboots, whom the reader understands to be Nazis. Do you see how I switched the order? I wove this commentary into my initial piece of evidence instead of saving it for the explanation. Up here, I said it separately. He first sees the jackboots. Misha believes that they are marches in a parade and declares he wants to join the group. And then separately, I say that we understand that they're Nazis. But I thought I could kind of weave it in here. He first saw the jackboots, whom the reader understands to be Nazis. As soon as the jackboots are described, the reader is on edge. But Misha believes that their marches are parades and declares that he wants to join the group. Now I get into my closing sentence. Through these moments of dramatic irony, Spinelli creates a mood of anxiety and anticipation in the reader. In this way, he allows us to feel a fraction of what it must have been like to live through this uncertain and horrific time. One last thing I want to point out to you about this paragraph is that I've alternated between example from the text and my explanation, my interpretation, my analysis of that example, and I've explained how it proves that dramatic irony heightens empathy. So you kind of flip back and forth. Example, explanation of how it proves your topic sentence. Then another example, and explaining how it proves it. Okay? So that's a pretty effective way. You can save your explanation for the end of your paragraph if it's the exact same explanation for every single example you're giving. If they all do it in exactly the same way, then instead of being repetitive with exactly the same analysis, you could save that for the end. I hope this helped you understand how to go from your outline to a paragraph form.